So everybody, thanks so much for being here today. I'm going to introduce you in a moment. First of all, I would like to just give a couple of pointers to our audience here. So we're basically going to run this quick, probably now a little bit quicker, 1 hour hangout. And we invited, for the first time, and we invited 3 champions from our community. So you can use the chat in the YouTube channel to ask questions. So what I'm going to do, we're going to have a quick conversation, first of all, and then giving you the time to create some ideas for questions. And the second part of the Hangout will be open to adopters' questions. Essentially, today we have here with us Yolanda from Farfetch, Ron from ING, Nico from Integrity One, and Lucia is also co-hosting with me from the team at PDToolkit. So first of all, I will give you 1 minute to introduce yourself, maybe starting from Nico on the left.
Thank you, Simone. So my name is Nick Léger. I'm the co-founder of Integrity.One. We're essentially a platform to offer growth as a service to small businesses. And we joined Simone in March in Amsterdam to dive into the platform Design Toolkit, which has been very helpful to help us put together this MVP, and we'll get a chance to chat about it a little later. We run a growth agency, and this is the platform that's going to allow us to scale to help more people globally.
Okay, so if I can say just one word, in this case, we are talking about a small company. So a company that is looking to use platform thinking to expand and grow and transform what it does. So it's a startup context. Ron?
Yes, I would then represent a not-so-startup context. My name is Ron Kersic. I'm an enterprise architect at ING Bank. My field of expertise and certainly interest is all around platform strategy and platform transformation. And my team and I, we discovered Platform Design Toolkit, I believe, March last year. And we have been users, evangelists, communicators of Platform Design Toolkit ever since.
Thank you. Yolanda?
Hi, I'm Yolanda Martin. I'm the head of platform design for Farfetch. We are a medium-sized company, I think, 10 years. We actually have a retail website, so we sell clothes. But actually, that's not the business of the company. That we have a marketplace. We are a technology company, and what we are doing right now is transforming from marketplace supply demand to a platform ecosystem type of model. I've used platform design into other occasions before, once for a startup, once for a massive company in communications called Hearst, more specifically Hearst Magazines. So I discovered Simone maybe three years ago, but we didn't talk. So we just started to talk and use properly the platform design toolkit about a year ago. But yes, it's been a long journey with platform design.
Thank you very much. Maybe just a bit, to give a bit more context, because ING, everybody knows that. Farfetch, I think everybody's going to know it quite soon. But the company that you introduced as a medium-sized company, in reality, has been through an IPO a couple of weeks ago, right? So it's public already. You're muted, okay?
Yeah, it's true. We went to IPO 1 month ago. We were valuated initially on $5 billion, but we valuated at $80 billion. So we made quite a lot of headlines in the news because of the success of our IPO. And yes, I mean, I consider it medium-sized because my previous company was huge. But yeah, you're right. It's not exactly. I mean, we are about 3,500 employees at the moment, so I guess it's not that small.
Yeah, I think it's a good to complete this round to make to notice that we have an incumbent, let's say, in traditional terms, like a bank. And among the banks, I think one of the most pioneering banks with digital, because it was one of the first to think about direct banking through online tools and so on. Then we have Farfetch, which is a marketplace. It's a marketplace startup, scale up, quite digital native, I would say. And then we have Integrity One, which is more or less what it's like 4.0 company. It's really about what comes after, because it's decentralized, based on blockchain. So it's really nice to see that we have 3 generations of companies in the call, in the Hangout today. So quick introductory question. Everybody can start. Maybe everybody that has fresh ideas can start. But basically, my first question is try to contextualize a little bit the role that Platform Design Toolkit in itself, so the tools, had in your most recent endeavor of the company you're working with. So to give a little bit more context of your experience, how you use the tools. For example, somebody maybe use them for educational purpose, others for design purpose. So that's more or less my first question to you. Whoever wants to start?
I can start. So because as I was saying before, I did the platform design in my previous company, but it was done more less organized, if you want, less methodically, and I only use the tools as examples and just to run some small workshops, and it was partially successful. This time with Farfetch, we started really strong from the beginning. The platform toolkit was an instrumental tool for me to actually bring platform ideas and platform design ideas to a wider group of the company, starting by the first person that I talked about platform design, which is Lizzie Joyce. I'm sure she's listening to this right now. She got fully trained on platform design, and she fully learned and then disseminated thanks to this toolkit. It was really, really fast to get her out to speed, and then we got out to speed lots of other people in the company thanks of how easily explained and how easy to use are the tools actually and the canvases. So we have put quite a lot of people through workshops and some classes, and it has helped us enormously. Has allowed us to accelerate the whole adoption much faster.
Just a quick counter questions, let's say. Since it was, I think, very interesting the work you have been doing by, let's say, rethinking the toolkit and redesigning, let's say, identifying your ecosystem. So to say, the only point that I want to stress is that the tools that we create, these are probably the most common version. So the one that everybody can use, but any company should be aware that you can take these tools and transform it and make it yours. And I think the day when we understand how to bring all the insights that these companies develop by doing this back into the community, which is something that is in the plan, let's say, to nurture, and this is a start, let's say, it's going to be very interesting because I know the level of insights that you have been getting there. So yes. Anything you want to add?
Absolutely. I mean, we constantly evolve them, but that happens with any toolkit that you actually get anywhere. The fact that you don't apply them 100% as they are, we modify to our needs, obviously. And this time has been fantastic because we had you quite close to actually share this, and the whole community actually to share, the way that we've been using it, and the way that we have adapted to our particular needs. And actually now in November, we're going to have a big roadshow for platform adoption within the company. So we are going to be able to stress further a lot of the learnings and a lot of the parts of the toolkit. So it will be able to actually even add more insights to the community and to the toolkit, hopefully.
And just a quick question, then leave it to the others. What was your experience in the masterclass? So meeting other people, was it an enriching experience?
No, it was fantastic. I mean, the one in Brussels, you mean? Right? It was great because the experience I have is relatively limited. The first time I did the platform was for the content. The second time, actually, the first 2 times were content. This time is retail. But there we meet people that were doing it for the government, for banking with Ron, some people with small startups, some people with big consultancy companies. So it was very, very interesting to see the different applications of the toolkit, and to understand how platform ecosystems can be many things and anything. And it's fantastic. It's fantastic to see how that the same toolkit can be applied to many different business organizations, or not business, actually governmental as well.
So the big point that we get back is this is not I would say religion. You can play with it. So let's really dismantle this idea that toolkits are something that you need to use as you get it. No, you can really play with it.
Yeah.
Ron, maybe I can get back to you because I think you have been playing a lot with this.
Yes, for sure we have. And we've been playing around with it at several levels. I think maybe for most of my colleagues, the most visible one is that the platform design toolkit is part of our internal innovation method called PACE. And so in that sense, the toolkit is being used to actually discover, define, and develop platform value propositions that we're now putting out in the world, or will be putting out in the near future. So that is really using the platform design toolkit for what I understand as what it is intended for, right? If there's such thing. Another case we're using it for is actually to help people understand what's so special about a platform, right? You can read the books. There are so many books on platforms. You can read the definitions. But if you go through the motions of Platform Design Toolkit in a workshop-like setting, not even the full day or a two-day setting, even 2 hours or 19 minutes, as we did recently, people discover halfway through what's so special about a platform, what's the different perspective one needs to have to understand platform economy, and one needs to understand in order to find your own path in the platform economy. It's always the motivation matrix that turns out to be the big epiphany thing, right? And it's not about us, but it's about people, organizations, if you want, roles in the ecosystem. And there is potential to be leveraged and unlocked. And so that's another really nice case of applying Platform Design Toolkit. And the third one that it's now springing up quite recently is we use the toolkit and the workshop format as context for initiatives that are not a platform in themselves, right? In banking, open banking is a hot topic. APIs, the PSD2 regulation that requires us to open up certain capabilities via APIs. And by applying the Platform Design Toolkit, you get a great understanding about the context of where your APIs will live and what they can entice your users to actually do with the API. So those would be the 3 primary cases we have been using the toolkit for. Really designing value propositions, building up an understanding of the true nature of platforms and building up platforms as a context for non-platform initiatives.
Okay, very good point. So a couple of thoughts that I want to share with you. I particularly like this idea that you can use PDT as something that gets people excited about platform thinking.
Yeah.
Because if you read a book, you get curious, that's fine. But if you just jump into doing work with colleagues, that changes completely your perspective. So it changes your perspective, especially, I think, understanding that you can envision things, you can create narratives. It's very powerful, I would say, for teams to move from this perspective of implementing something that comes from the bottom into envisioning new ways for the company to evolve, essentially. And I think one thing that we may share with the community that was it dates back to a conversation that we had at least I think 6 months ago, something like that. And you talk about this PSD2, and for banks, this has been something that fell on there from the regulators. So now you have to be open.
Yeah.
And I think it's really interesting because we get to this idea that a company like a bank, which is an incumbent business, it's a business that comes from the 20th century, let's say. How can a company like this understand what is going to be in the future? And it comes up that it's probably going to come from interactions with the ecosystem. Yeah. So it's like PSD2 push banks to be open, but now it's up to them to understand how to understand the future together with their ecosystems.
Yeah.
Anything that you want to add on this?
No, and I think that's a perfectly fine summarization. And my personal take and involvement is this. I would like to turn this around into an opportunity, basically just what you said, right? So indeed, it's something we have to do. If we have to do it, right? I mean, why not embrace it, right? And we use the toolkit to understand what kind of possibilities could spring forth by being forced to open up certain capabilities of your bank. And so what positive pathways can we plot going forward?
Mm-hmm. That is, by the way, the evolution that now banks are living, so being treated as utilities, something that you need to open up because you want to increase, let's say, the competition and the innovation in the whole finance ecosystem is something that now is up for banks. But maybe in the future will be up also for Farfetch, I don't know, for marketplaces, because that also marketplaces have been subject to increasing regulatory scrutiny. So at some point, maybe the regulators can come up and tell Farfetch to make APIs available. So it's really a metaphor, I would say, of evolution. So being open and in conversation with the ecosystem through platform strategies will help us companies understand what the future is about. There is this sentence from Simon Wardley, that we love Simon Wardley. Whoever hasn't worked with Simon Wardley's maps needs to go there. In our blog, there is in the last couple of weeks we have been writing a lot about this. But he said once that ecosystems are future sensing machines for companies. So basically, I think one key point that we are learning by implementing platform strategies with companies is that it's no more the company that innovates, but the shift has been so fast, and then now it's the ecosystem that innovates. And so you need to learn how to listen and to empower instead of creating solutions for problems that we don't even understand anymore. So at this point, I think the interaction becomes the key objective for the intelligent organization, I would say. Anything that you want to add, Yolanda, because I've seen you have been unmuting?
Yes, well, I'm muting because like this I can talk faster, but but what you're saying is correct. I mean, I don't think that we're going to need regulation to open our APIs. I think pretty much the plan is to have them public as soon as possible. It might be a bit of a control environment in the beginning because we just started with this, so I don't think we're going to have everything public from the start. But that's where we're going. We're going to in ecosystems. This is what we are designing right now and putting all the pieces of the puzzle in place to empower and to enable every company around us to actually thrive and grow in our ecosystem. That's the whole idea behind Farfetch. The idea that we have put in place a pretty solid infrastructure and a series of services that now everyone can take advantage of, and we can share. So it is good for us and it's good for everyone.
That's totally right. This conversation on openness and control brings me, I think, nicely to start talking about Integrity One with Nico. So Nico, you mentioned that you have been using the PDT to shape your strategy. So you have been actually coming to a masterclass and dedicating 2 days with your partner to this work. So my question is, what does it mean to use Platform Design Toolkit in general to develop the vision for a company that is open by strategy, let's say? So, for example, Yolanda mentioned this idea that at the start the environment will be a bit controlled, and this is part of any strategy that we are working with, especially the corporate ones. Everybody wants to vet and control a little bit. But when it comes to a blockchain token-enabled company, what does it mean? How does it work?
It's what's been very interesting for us is that we definitely expected the masterclass and the toolkit to help us design the platform, but I think we underestimated how much it would shape our thinking, in the sense that my partner and I come from different background. He's a little bit more from a marketing and a financial background, and I come from a product management background. And as we started to design the software itself, we're very user-centric, but we tend to design a customer journey type of approach. And for us, platform thinking in the toolkit helped us to be better enablers rather than control the experience, to start designing the software and the platform to be more of a connector, of an enabler, to harness the ecosystem's natural innovation. And in our case, what's been really interesting also, so this was more at the user experience level. So in our case, we have small businesses that get serviced by experts that bring the recipes to grow a company, by the freelancers that execute those recipes, and by the technology providers that provide the tools for that to happen. So at that level, it's allowed us to help them organize themselves rather than us organizing them. A second impact that's been more recent is that in our distribution strategy, how are we going to onboard people, let them discover this platform, learn that it can grow their small business and get onto it? At first, we had more traditional distribution methods. We're a marketing agency, so we know a lot of ways to make people aware of something and bring them on board. But it's through the notion of the learning engine that we designed only in the last 2 or 3 months. We designed a cluster strategy, a little bit of a fractal, where we as the shapers become the shaper of a small cluster of 5 or 6 similar businesses to ours, and we transmit our learning to them so that they can do the same thing that we are doing, but then we enable them to do that for their own cluster, and so on and so forth. So in doing so, the learning engine has become an incredibly essential part of the design. And for us, if it wasn't for being reminded of not only the transaction engine in the platform, but the learning engine, we would have never had that same level of insight into being like, wait, now we're being too centralized. It's too much about us. It's too much about us as platform owners shaping. How can we empower others to shape the experience? So I think that's been the most, probably the most impactful contribution of using the the toolkit and learning at the masterclass. It helps us to empower others rather than just be central shapers into the platform.
Yeah, very nice when you say it helps us to say, well, we are too centralized. So I think it's something that a company like yours, since it's a native in the decentralization, in the decentralized world, at least as this mission, can really afford. It's a reflection that can really afford to make. But probably it's going to be more complicated for existing companies to switch the perspective from inside to outside. And I think a toolkit, the toolkit and our, in general, our knowledge model and all the things that we are trying to connect from other bright minds in the world would be also useful for companies to really change this perspective and start to care more about the ecosystem that they are trying to address and the ecosystem that they are trying to support, and instead of themselves and controlling. Because you made a good point about the learning engine, I think, and the big I would say learning in the learning engine is essentially this, because transaction engines and marketplaces and transaction-based business models are easy. You just put a gate, and then whenever you open the gate, then you take a fee. So that's going to be an easy business model. But what happens when you stop controlling and you stop vetting and try to focus yourself in increasing the value of the whole through learning? So then you need to figure out what is your business model. And I think in this process, the work that you guys are doing and many other companies, and something that we have been also writing about in the blog, so to understand that this new token economy model is a big opportunity, but not just for a company like yours, but also for incumbents, so also for marketplaces. So I have a little question back to Yolanda and Ron. What do you think about the future of the evolution of business models? Are we leaning towards for companies to learn what does it mean to have a business model that is not based on control? So what we call permissionless business models.
I think we're definitely facing that way. I don't see it happening in the next couple of years to us, because we're still trying to figure out how the business model is going to work. But so we need to become first like an internal platform and figure out also education engine to put it in place to allow for everybody to move at the same time. But it's definitely going there. Absolutely. It has to be decentralized as much as possible. How far on the decentralization Farfetch will go, we're still too early to say. I'm not sure about that.
Ron?
Yeah, I would actually agree on Yolanda's statement. It's so permissionless, decentralized, disobedience, right? That's the name of a blog post you wrote maybe half a year ago. These aspects will pop up to a certain degree, but I have honestly no idea what that degree will be. I have honestly no idea to what extent we actually can decide how much disobedience or how much permissionlessness we would like to build into our business propositions, and to what extent society in general makes us go into a certain direction. So many things are still up for grabs. It's very hard to plot now a linear path from we are here and we will end up there. So it's one of the reasons I keep pitching platforms is not as an end goal, right? It will be a permissionless and disobedient platform world, but I'm using it as a lens to understand what the forces are in play and from what direction the wind is blowing us, if I can allow myself this little poetic metaphor. So In typical architecture fashion, I'm inclined to say I have no idea yet.
That's a good point. I think I see a lot of value in using this horizon thinking. No, so try to see what are the wins, no, and then see and imagine like what if this wind starts to blow very strong, and then what happens in the near term. So I think this is also a good point. So I have one question that we can maybe use from the audience on YouTube as a starter for the second part of this conversation. Let's say that we're going to take 20 minutes more, maybe because we are late. If you guys can stay for a minute more. So there is a question that I think it's a good starter of another part of the conversation. That is what comes after the design. So the tools are very fundamental, let's say, for thinking and as a team, and for strategic design. So trying to put together a vision and imagine what we can bring to the market. So the question from Virginie was about how long, let's say, does it take for a project, let's say, a platform project, to move from the design phase into the market phase, so to get into the market. How many weeks or months does it take? So I would have one way to answer this question, but I think it's a good idea to let you guys answer. And maybe Nico, since you are actually using it essentially for getting to the market, so what is your experience weighted with the, I would say, the extraordinary innovative aspect of your project?
So in our case, in different circumstances, because we're doing an ICO at the same time, we're doing a token sale at the same time as we're designing the platform, I'd say that you can go as fast as get to the market I love to go to the market in 30 days with a first iteration in truly agile design and put something out there and then get some feedback. We are designing the software currently with our tech partner, which are out of Ukraine. We work with Softhouse, which is a big engineering group out of there. And what's been interesting is we chose to take a little bit more time. We could have gone really fast, but we chose to take a little bit more time so we can align the onboarding of our investors with the design of the platform. So we have funds that started to trickle in. We invest that into the design. But what's been really interesting for me as a product manager is to see how it actually affects the software engineers. Because our thinking that we grabbed from you and from the community and from the masterclass, we're injecting it in things that, and it might make Ron smile, but things that are very common, very familiar, like user flow and that sort of thing. When we start to design the feature of the platform, we have new questions. We have a new way of looking at things. We're like, oh, this user flow is a little bit, like we said, like it's a little bit user-centric. What about the other entities on the platform? Even in our screen design, we have to move out of the familiar guidelines that we have and think more in terms of how to harness the innovation on the platform, even when it comes to things like screen design and buttons and where's the home base for this type of user, that type of user. So it can take as little as you want, as I think you can get something out in 30 days. If you're going to take a little bit more your time, like we're taking more like 3-4 months to design the first prototype. But I really wanted to add that it's been fascinating how much influence it had with the actual design at the engineering level, at especially the UX, UI, the user experience, user interface specialist is probably climbing up the walls now with all this new thinking that we're sharing with them. It's been a fascinating journey.
So, sorry, I thought I was on mute. So my question is, maybe, sometimes we overestimate the value and the length of the design process, right? Ron, any reflection on this? And then Yolanda.
Yeah, well, I mean, the design never stops, right?
Exactly.
Design is not a phase and then you're done and you go to market and everything is all roses. So it has to be iterative and incremental. And in that sense, pairing Platform Design Toolkit with Lean Startup for platforms, that seems to be a really golden combination. It's always a bit weird if a large organization starts using a startup methodology like Lean Startup. But I really feel that the Lean Startup flow really carries over rather well to platforms, right? Any platform endeavor, just like a startup, when it starts, it's a faith-based initiative, right? You have a lot of assumptions and you have strong vision and energy, but everything needs to be tested and validated and relearned and unlearned. So the design process has to be this circular motion. Actually, if you allow me, you see in the back, we have this little triangle model we're using to get across that design is a never-ending circular motion. And I really think that's an important thing to get across. And indeed, so you can start within 30 days. You can take more time to have an upfront design, right? You can even take a couple of months. I really don't care, as long as you are aware that it is an ongoing process. I feel very strongly about that one.
Yolanda, one point that maybe could be also good for your reflection, since we have been working together on the product innovation flow of the company, no? And I think we understood very well that the platform is not the one thing. It's not that you have a platform, no? It's that you need to wear a new pair of glasses and look at what you do and continuously embed platform thinking, which is essentially ecosystem centricity, and abundance mindset, and disobedience into whatever you do. So, what is your thought about this?
That's correct. I mean, I completely agree with what Ron says. Absolutely, lean and continuous improvement is the way to go for a platform, but for anything in general. However, the first part is adoption, and here we are, talking about platform adoption, and we are first adopters, and getting people to change their mindset into designing products and services into platform, not even disobedience. That's probably a very advanced concept sometimes for companies in general, but getting people to understand that now you're not in the center of what you're doing. You're actually trying to put together pieces for other people to build their businesses with. Moving a company that has been created as a supply-demand marketplace from the beginning and moving them to that platform thinking is challenging, and having the tools to do that is great. I mean, we are also creating another toolkit within Farfetch to help every team to be more platform mindful and to design their services and their products with platform in mind. And we have created a set of many different small tools to apply under the everyday work, because for everyday people, things like motivations and entities and big thinking is too much. So they need that area, that sweet spot where they apply platform thinking to their very specific job, either it be operation, unboxing, or architecture, or engineering, or whatever, marketing, or whatever part of the business is. So actually, for us, getting that platform thinking from the macro thinking, which is what we do as a group, to the everyday tasks is extremely important, and is quite challenging and quite difficult, actually.
Because this also connects with the narrative, no? So when you have to transform a market as a startup, you build a narrative targeted to the market, like integrity, for example. But when you work into a company, you need to change the way you actually think and work as a company. You need to build a narrative that is a narrative of inclusion as well. So you need to transform not only the market, but also the company itself and all the units inside the company and all the people inside the company, no?
Absolutely. We are changing completely our storytelling in the company. So the next month, November, is all about us doing a long road show and going to all of our offices and running webinars and master classes all over the company to change that storytelling of what the company is now compared to what it was. So yes, it's incredibly important that narrative is embedded into the company for the platform to move.
So I would love to use the last 7-10 minutes to let you ask a question among each other. So any question that you have for others in this call. And please, people from the YouTube stream, feel free to drop a last one maybe.
I actually have a question for the group, because one other side effect for us of the platform thinking has been that we were already set in a bit of a vision of abundance versus a version of scarcity. We like to design for the ecosystem, try to reduce the frictions between what could be potential competitors. We've always had a mindset of try to take what could be a competitor and make them a partner in some way. But platform thinking in the way that we've been doing it with you has brought us to a whole different level. And it's almost like a new constraint that we have of when we look at the entities in the ecosystem, when we look at the motivations of the different people that are involved in our industry. There's government, there's other growth agencies, there's all the participants, and there's people that might get disrupted by this new model that we're unfolding. And it's allowed us to almost systematically always find a way to make those potential competitors or even detractors, to bring them into the fold, to find a place in this platform for them to find their own, and to enable them to continue to play, but under new rules, if you will. And I was wondering, for the other participants, has platform design affected the way you view your potential competition or your competition per se? Have you seen this kind of effect on your work to some degree?
That's a very interesting question.
To some degree, certainly. It's the I think so if we do internally a platform design toolkit workshop, one of the things we do in the course of that workshop is making a transition from entities to roles, right? So you have entities that can be people, organization, things, if you want, right? But in the end, you cluster them and you identify what their role is. And just separating an entity, which could be another bank, and transitioning into a role just changes the whole perception and the whole mindset of how you actually are looking at that landscape. So it's the so no, it's hard to come up with an example to actually say, yes, there we embraced a potential competitor now as a partner. But I have seen it many times in workshop, especially the awareness like workshops, by changing the language from entities to roles, exactly the kind of phenomenon or the change of perspectives as you addressed popped up. And it has popped up several times. So I'm willing to say that's a reoccurring side effect of applying the platform design toolkit and making that transition from entities to roles. So yes, certainly.
So maybe then before leaving to Yolanda, if you want to add a bit, it's really the platform thinking and platform design toolkit is really coping with what Rita McGrath essentially talk about, and also the end of the competitive advantage, but also maybe the end of competition as well.
Well, I mean, sorry, because I so love that book from Rita McGrath, right? And the title of the book is The End of Sustained Competitive Advantage. So any competitive advantage is transient, right? So what's now a competitive advantage or a competitor can into another context where it is not. And that thinking is really important.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, it is. It is also for us. I mean, one thing that consistently our CEO José Neves has been talking about in external conferences and in interviews is that we are not trying to compete with the boutiques or with the brands that we work with. We are just enablers. That's what we are. That's what platforms are. Just enablers. We are just, you know, we're building all of this to create that environment, that ecosystem where we all can live and work together and just support each other. So that is, you know, is the center of everything. How far we arrive with this and how well understood by other companies, and that's all up to the, as we were saying, you know, is the part of the education into the platform. You can build this amazing transactional engine and have all the tools there available for people to actually evolve and thrive. But if they don't understand what is their work within the platform, or they don't find their place within the ecosystem, nothing will work. So we all kind of need to have the same level of information and the same level of non-competitiveness, if you want. And I guess that's when we arrive to the point of governance, which is, you know, an area where I'm very, very interested on. How far do you govern? How far you don't govern to make an ecosystem work? How much anarchy or how much disobedience can you allow an ecosystem to have before it just goes one way or another? So.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's a good point, because in the end, from our experience, it's so often you start talking about governance when you realize that the perspective has changed. So governance may look like a far topic for companies, but in reality, it's much more and more embedded with the business model within time. And I think in the case of Integrity One, that's essentially the same thing. So you have a business model and a governance model, which are more or less the same. And from there, I think a lot of questions are rising that me and Nico, we are debating every few weeks, trying to understand at which extent, you know, you can infuse your business model with a governance model, no? And tokens, crypto tokens are there, no, as a new tool that we can experiment with. If you have 1 minute more, there is another question from the audience. We are going to take this and then we move into closing. Fine. Yeah. So one question is, how do you make and test the MVP based on what you have found on the canvases? Anyone that wants to jump in?
I cannot talk about Farfetch in this case, but I can talk about how we did it at Hearst initially. Mm-hmm. It worked organically in a way of we started with a small area of the business. In this case, it was a platform for content sharing, or actually we created a platform to actually run all of Hearst magazine. So we started with a particular magazine, which was Cosmopolitan, and a country, and then we kind of clustered all of the Cosmopolitans in Europe, and we tested how we could actually share content, share CMSs, share resources, rights management, asset management systems, and so on. And then that was the MVP. We got really valuable data. We proved that the model, as lowering transaction costs and lowering and creating efficiencies, was working incredibly. This platform was never created to make money as per se, so it has never been commercialized externally. It's an internal platform, if you want, but it worked incredibly for the 5 magazines within Europe. So then we started to include all the other magazines, all the other properties within Europe, and then we moved to America, to the US, and then from there it moved to globally and not only magazines. So it worked. The MVP was basically just taking a particular part of the business, testing it there, getting the data and the numbers, and then convincing everybody else that this was a good idea, and just growing from there.
And in our case, if I may echo, I encourage anyone who does platform design to start testing way before the MVP actually. In our case, we do apply the Lean Startup framework, and we tested each assumption with, I love the notion of the napkin prototype, which is, here's what we're thinking. You have this role, or you're this entity, or you're this participant to the platform. What do you think? Constantly getting out of the building, as some practitioners like to call it, get out of our ivory tower, go into the world and test our assumptions. And they surprise us all the time. Like, often you have a piece of it that you're like, yeah, the assumption was right, but there's so much more to it. And there's this constant feedback loop that's enriching. So test assumptions as soon as you can. If you made an assumption, try to test it within the same day, ideally, to at least some lesser degree. And constantly have those conversations with the people that will use the platform. They enrich the design. I used to have the person who taught me Agile years ago used to say, let's get everyone in the room from the first conversation, like all different roles, all different expertise. And I used to cringe on that, because I was like, these people don't necessarily need to be there at the onset. And over the years, I've come to welcome that, because everybody in their different profession and their different expertise, they bring something different to the mix. And to start early as a collective and to have early conversations, even when you're very far from having, let's say, designed the screen, the user interface person brings a different perspective, and the engineer brings something else, and the user brings something else. So it's been fascinating to start early to validate assumptions.
Yeah. And because platforms are all about interactions, right? And interactions unlocking potential. So it has a very human side to it. So certainly in the early phase of your platform idea, there doesn't need to be any software to roll out, right? In the end, it's demonstrating that your envisioned transaction of interaction indeed unlocks the envisioned potential, and you can do it, and you can indeed do it with just the napkin, right? Or you're just getting in a car and pretending you're a car sharing service. It's what I think it's Google, they call it prototyping. These really silly, almost childish kind of prototyping things you can do way more upfront, because way long before you actually have any software running and do your typical MVP thing on that one, because it's, in the end, it's such a humane business, right? It's interaction and potential, and there's so many things you can start validating and testing and learning from that one in real life.
Definitely, and if I can add one bit, and then we'll say bye. PDT grows in the, let's say, it's born and grows into the heritage of essentially two things. One is design thinking, more as a whole, and then customer development and lean startup. So for those that are curious, on our blog, for example, there is an entire blog post that explains how you craft interviews after the design that you make. And it's very good point, for example, what Nico said, you need to invite the stakeholders of the entities in your ecosystem in the room at the design session, because that's how you make the best of co-creation at the end. So again, I don't want to be long, because it's already 1 hour that we are going, we are online. I want to thank you very much, guys, for your time. We lost Yolanda, I think, because we went 20 minutes late. She's back now, so good for you're back for the final goodbye. So again, thanks very much for your time. I think it was amazing understanding from the community, and really for the community to feel free to join to reach out. And let me just highlight a final moment that we are going to run this masterclass in London in just a few days. So for those that don't know, we're going to have this masterclass in London on the 15th and 16th of November. There are a few spots left. All the masterclasses are coming later on in December. We're going to launch it today. One in Madrid will be 18 and 19, if I'm not wrong. And then we are going to come to Paris next year. Here is where you can find more. Anything that we do, it's open source, all is accessible. You can really play with that. As Yolanda said, she was working with the tools for 2 years before reaching out. And that's essentially what we are designing for you guys to use it without any need to reach out. Of course, if you need some help, we are here to help you with trainings and facilitation and services and so on. We're going to publish a little wrap-up of this call, and for as much as it worked very well, apart for the technical issues, I think we are going to replicate soon with new adopters. So reach out to us through the website. There is a form where you can actually explain us what you're doing with PDT, and maybe you're going to be in the next call. So thanks so much, everyone, for your amazing time with us. Let me see you in the face. Thanks again. Thanks so much for your time. It was great to have you, all of you here in the call, and everybody on the channel. If you guys can stay for just a final bye, I'm going to interrupt the streaming now. Ciao. Bye-bye, everyone.